The company hoping to build a quarry at Skeleton Hill at Chiltern has hit another snag. Indigo Shire has already said no, and now the state's Aboriginal Affairs Minister has reopened an investigation into the cultural significance of the area. The first investigation failed to find any significance to the Aboriginal community, but there's new evidence it may have been a burial site. Cement company Wholesome has taken the Shire to VCAT to overturn the planning decision. That hearing is finished, but a decision is yet to be handed down.
Regional Affairs Minister will re-investigate the cultural significance of Chiltern's Skeleton Hill. Extractive miner Wholesome has applied to develop a quarry at the site, but Indigo Shire has rejected the application. Concerns were raised the department had approved development of the site before identifying all Aboriginal values. In announcing the review of the decision, the minister says there is no timeline for the audit and all Aboriginal groups will be consulted. Wholesome's 8-day appeal to VCAT wound up in Melbourne yesterday.
That's another axe blank. This one's an axe, stone axe.
It's been used and nicked and broken. And
yeah. See, they didn't put an handle on it. They could have been using it as a small hand axe or things like that. You could see the way it was held, and it fits in, well, as an Aboriginal, a small hand, and it fits in your hand pretty good. They could have been wanting to make a handle for it later on, but it was ground down. It had a lot of use because, as you can see, it splintered off the edge there.
you can see the shine on the edge.
Yeah,
that is shining.
very much so.
Beautiful.
Yeah, what's this? Does that?
Oh,
Look at that.
oh, look at that.
Yes.
And you look at, see
I've
those
never
things?
seen that
Oh, my
one. They
goodness.
stuck two pieces to me,
Yeah.
but they're not.
No,
No, it's just one piece.
I've never seen a double-edged one like that before.
Magnificent, isn't it?
That's
When you look
defty.
at, and you can look at artefacts, look at the things, pick them up, and
Go
automatically,
back together.
my goodness, you know, you see. So now you know that that is one
Check that out,
piece.
Kim.
That's
Yes.
not two pieces.
Yeah, yes.
If it's,
That's brilliant.
Unbelievable, isn't
This
it's
one.
like you went to have a go to make this side.
Exactly, yeah.
And went, nah, bugger that.
No,
and
I'll try the
down
other
this
end.
edge.
Yeah.
And it's got a nice edge on it.
My
What
word.
on earth is he using it for? Like, that's it.
Well, it could have been the same way again, you know, either in the
A lot
hand
of
or
bashing.
even, yeah,
Actually, they've been bashing it on, I'll put that on there.
Yeah.
Bashing it on that edge
On
too.
the edge.
Using it to do something. And with Skeleton Hill in particular, with these things coming from that area, these things over here coming from that particular area, is there's a lot of story about, from the community side of things, that there were burials. I've been told that there are connections of Tommy McRae to Skeleton Hill, and the tree burial stuff up there. And now the tree burial is a traditional type of burial we did in this type of country. So if you weren't down on the river and weren't in those sand dunes, you were burying people in trees. In the early days when Europeans first got here, they were walking through these hills. This comes from some families around here, and they believed it was the spookiest place on earth. They were scared to death
That's documented.
of walking through there.
That's
And the
documented.
reason why they were scared to death of walking through there is there were people buried in the trees all around them.
Alan French is one.
Yeah. And people will still tell you that today. You can talk to just, many families that have been here for generation after generation will tell you the fear they had of walking through that bush It wasn't just because the Aboriginal people were still there, because in a lot of cases they weren't. The spirit of those people was still in those trees. If you walk up there today, you can feel them. You know the ancestors are still present in that country. We feel safe. We feel like we can walk through there. But when I talk to other people, they say they are really, really scared or frightened or don't even like to walk past that area. And that is because our ancestors are still there protecting that country today. That's their burial ground. And when we talk to people who went through Lake Mudamere Reserve over here, they talk about Skeleton Hill as being the traditional burial grounds. They talk about that's where Tommy McRae's personal belongings were buried in a tree, because traditionally he was buried down there in Mudamere at the reserve, but that's not what he wanted. Apparently he wanted to be buried in a tree on Skeleton Hill. These stories are documented in Aboriginal communities. We know that that area had special significance for our old guys around here. Unfortunately, there's just not enough people still living here today to be able to
Speak out on behalf of
and be able to educate people on that connection to these places and what they really mean to us as people.
But see, we still have that connection of people speaking out, because we've got this community that is still here. And we've still got the elders within the community that have been given artefacts. And this is the proof of how all these things come together. And as you just said, of Tommy McRae, one of the most noted artists around the place, has a connection to this type of these artefacts. That the artefacts come together with the people.
There are many stone tools that have been found at Mount Pilot, which is only 5 kilometres away. Some have been found on my property. My friends, if Rex Refuge was here, he would affirm that there are other tools found, and many scar trees, etc. So there's no doubt that this was a hive of Aboriginal activity before white man came along. And one only has to look at the vista of Mount Pilot, Skeleton Hill, the National Park, Mount Kookaburra, Mount Barranduda. The whole thing goes on. It's all part of a panorama which must have been of great importance to Aboriginal people. And we've probably finally found the solution as to why it was called Skeleton Hill. Nobody's ever known why, but because of conversations that we've had previously and with Wally and Donna, it's believed that Skeleton Hill was a burial site, in fact, and we believe that it was used as an area for tree burial because of the topography of the hill itself. And I'd be very interested in what you and what Sandy thought of the proposal that Skeleton Hill has its name because of its importance as a burial site.
Yes, it's like Karen said, this is not, the stone artefacts is not only significant, but there's other things that go with it, and that's the thing about this whole saga type of thing, it's not like things that we do today. We can go and build a fence or dig a hole or even build a town, and I mean that doesn't have a significance until a few generations, and then it becomes a very historical part of our thing, because back then when you was living in that sort of environment, as we said before, we were a tribe or a group of people, and everything we did was related to our survival. Whether it be making stone artefacts, and whether it be travelling many, many miles to trade with somebody else for that particular stone. I mean, it was all a part of our survival. At the end of the day, if you're going to, save a site, well, anything that's on that site that relates is just as significant too, because it belongs there, and that's where it was a part of that survival thing that happened not just 1-2 years, but maybe for 20,000 years, you know.
Aboriginal stone tools. And the recollection with reference to the box and the statement, the old writing on the box is that they do come from Skeleton Hill.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of this exercise, that is important. Yeah. Whether they were traded stone over years with the community is irrelevant to this particular exercise.
No, I agree, Karen. I agree with you, and that's why I sort of had a good think about this, you know, when you told me about the artefacts, and so that's a good thing to go into, because that's a very significant part of this whole story, you know, because it was a special place for Aboriginals, and because the stone there doesn't necessarily mean that they used the stone from there. It was special to them for other reasons, you know, as a burial site. Who knows, there might have been other activities that took place there as well.
Sandy, can you just explain to us and summarise for us how you feel about the importance of the hill that we've been talking about?
Well, after chatting with Graham and the other local people here today, I am now of the opinion that there's a very important part of this, and that's what's sitting on this table here today. You know, whether there's skeletons still up on that hill or not, we know they were there because these people actually found them when they came here and established this town. But the point of it is, every bit significant of this whole thing is this artefact that here, they were used by these people. And I'm so excited that, you know, we still have this evidence today, and there's no doubt. And that these people here who came and established this town way back in the early time still have that same respect for what's out there on that hill. And I'm so excited about that. From an Indigenous person's point of view, I think that that's a wonderful thing, because here we are, there's two groups of people that have that same respect and you know, and recognise the significance of these artefacts, that this is a very historical place and should be treated as so.
As we were saying, it's important to black culture. It's also important to white culture. So, you know, what does skeleton mean to you?
Well, I was born here in Chiltern, as my father was and my grandfather. We came here in 1848, actually. And I can see it from my bedroom window every morning. It's such an integral part of Chiltern, you know, it's absolutely iconic. And I always remember my Uncle Clyde, who was born in 1891, and he left Australia in the early 20s and didn't come back till sometime in the 50s. And when he was interviewed by one of the newspapers, they said, "What's the biggest change that you've seen in Chiltern?" He said, "What have they done to the skeleton?" The interviewer said, "What do you mean, what have they done to the skeleton?" He said, "When I went away, it was clothed in forest." And he said, "Now it's half naked." He said, "Whoever let them do that?" And these words keep coming back to me when I think of what's proposed to do to it now, which of course is going to be forever. I mean, it's not like chopping down a tree, or if you've got an inappropriate house, you know, in a picturesque situation, you can get rid of it in the future. But when you pull down a hill, I mean, this is for eternity, isn't it? It's not just for our generation, it's for the generations to come, and surely shows a contempt for the integrity of the landscape. You know, this is the way it's always been, and you would like to think that our children and the Aboriginals' successors would enjoy it in just the same way that we have.
Yes, and it's, as you said before, it's such an iconic thing. It's something that you can see from all angles and approaches. I think you mentioned it gives you a feeling of being home.
Oh, look, I travel quite a lot. And coming back from the north or coming up from the south, as you approach Chiltern, it's the first thing that you see that says Chiltern. And once I see the skeleton, I know I'm home. Just the same as once I come through the gap at Glenrowan. For me, that's the northeast. Yes. Everything I can see from the top of the Glenrowan Gap with its hideous quarry there. Yes. If anyone wants to see the destruction that can be wreaked by a quarry, you've only got to go to Glenrowan.
Yes.
So yes, it's so close to the town. I mean, you can see it from almost every part of the town. And surely the quarry that's already there, that these people have been operating, I can never understand why I mean, I know they've kicked it out now, but there was an invisible quarry in the forest. If you asked 99 out of 100 of Chiltern people where the quarry was, they wouldn't be able to tell you. They'd just be able to say up there in the forest somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not okay to have an invisible quarry in the forest, but the suggestion is that it's okay to have it in the most visible situation in the whole town. Yes. I can see no common sense in that at all.
No, indeed. And what do you think future generations will think of us if we allow that hill to be removed?
People will say it's like wars and things. How could you have done that? Where were the voices who spoke up and said you can't do that?
Yes.
You know, this is something you can't do. And with the heritage people, and rightly so, they dictate within the heritage area what colour you can paint your roof, what kind of pickets you can have in the fence in front of your house. And yet here it's proposed to remove an entire huge piece of scenery, and that's okay. Whereas you can't have that particular sort of pickets. I mean, where is the common sense in that?
Indeed.
It's just completely illogical. Yeah. And as for the argument that it provides such a lot of employment, I mean, we're told by our masters in Canberra that we have 100% employment here in Australia. So any of the six people, only two of whom I understand are locals, any of those who lose their job will have no trouble in replacing it. As I'm sure anyone in Chiltern who'll tell you, who've tried to have someone to cut their lawns, will tell you there are job openings all over the place.
I believe since the quarry, the old quarry started, or finished I should say, that those people are gone anyway. So there would be the 6 or 8 jobs that are contemplated will probably be new people anyway.
And there, of course, too, with the old quarry, I understand that their obligation when it was first mooted was that it be made good. Yes. Well, I mean, how? And that was a hole in the ground. Well, you've only got to go out there and see what an enormous hole in the ground it is.
Yes.
And has it been made good? Not on your life.
No.
So how can you make good a whole landscape, which is what this entails, and where are you going to get the material to do it with anyhow?
Yes.
And of course, like so many of these companies, they have their wicked way, mining companies and so forth, and when it's no longer of any use to them, they fold their wings and disappear.
Yes. Yes.
And nobody then is responsible.
Yes.
So where is the screw to turn?
Yes, exactly. Andrew Gilmore, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts today.
My pleasure. Like so many people who live in this beautiful part of the world, we love it and we want it to stay as beautiful as it can be for the generations to come.
Fortune seekers, hallowed ground, veins of gold run through this town. Iron fought, the wild birds found. Among you people all gather round. There's a fight to save, a chosen place from another landlord, a dollar-eyed face. But you'll all get rich, cement to spill, gonna fill your boots on skeleton hill. Build more cities with what you killed, cracked them bones on skeleton hill. Blackfella land, long-time host, Eustace and McCubbin's ghost. Big company never walked this land, never held on to a skeleton's hand. Another deep hole, skeleton grave, indigo blue with a shade of gray.